Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're exploring one of the most infamous and absolutely fascinating locations in all of gaming history, Sen's Fortress. It's the ultimate proving ground, a grueling, trap-filled gauntlet that will test your patience. But beyond the swinging axes and the rolling boulders, it's actually the exact point where the fates of two absolute legends of the lore intertwine. So let's unpack the community theories surrounding this dark, mechanical castle together.
Here's our dossier for today. We're going to start by investigating the mystery of Sen, then look at our brain, the prisoner Big Hat Logan, followed by our brawn, the conqueror Iron Tarkus, and finally, we'll look at their shared tragic destinies in Lordran.
Okay, let's dive into this with Section 1, the mystery of Sen.
So, who exactly is Sen? It's a question that has literally plagued the community for over a decade. I mean, why does a location called Sen's Fortress seemingly have no character named Sen running the show, guarding the gates, or waiting for you at the summit as a boss?
If you go digging through Reddit and the community discussions, you'll basically find four main theories. The first two suggest Sen isn't actually a person at all, but rather the Japanese word for 1,000, meaning it's a fortress of 1,000 traps, or maybe it's just a localization mistranslation. On the lore side, theories suggest Sen is either Gwyn's erased firstborn, the Nameless King, who has a known affinity for the snake men that guard this place, or that Sen is simply the soul trapped inside the Iron Golem boss itself.
But hold on, let's isolate that translation theory for a second. While a ton of Western players firmly believe Sen translates to the number 1,000, native Japanese speakers in the community have pointed out a really vital piece of evidence. In the Japanese text, the name is written in katakana, and that spelling actually suggests a specific proper noun or a unique name, not the number 1,000. So the mystery of Sen remains exactly that, a complete mystery.
Moving right along to Section 2, the prisoner, Big Hat Logan.
Now, Big Hat Logan is hailed as the absolute greatest sorcerer from the Vinheim Dragon School. He's this brilliant scholar of the soul arts who journeyed to Lordran seeking wisdom. But instead of marveling at his incredible magical pedigree, the community just relentlessly hyperfixates on the obvious. Players constantly flood the forums with meme-filled humor, asking why they call him Big Hat Logan. Spoiler alert, it's literally because he wears a massive hat to block out the noise of the world so he can focus on his studies.
But here's where the high-minded lore slams right into the brutal level design. Despite his vast intellect and unmatched magical prowess, Logan completely failed the physical trials of Sen's Fortress. He didn't conquer it. He ended up as a helpless prisoner, locked inside a hanging cage. To free him, you either have to redirect a massive boulder trap to smash through a wall, or go hunt down the cage key hidden elsewhere in the fortress.
Let's move to and see how this builds when we track Logan's geographic timeline, because a deeply ironic pattern emerges here. He goes from physical imprisonment in a cage at Sen's Fortress to a brief little break at Firelink Shrine. But then, in his obsessive pursuit of knowledge, he travels to the Duke's archives where he is once again imprisoned in a cage, this time by Seath the Scaleless. And finally, after being freed a second time, he ends up trapped entirely within his own madness in the library.
Contrast those earlier humorous memes with this piece of in-game dialogue you get when you first meet him in Sen's Fortress. This place is melting my mind. The inactivity is repressive. It's a grim, highly atmospheric line, and it heavily foreshadows Logan's tragic intellectual breaking point later in the story.
The really crucial point is how you, the player, actually trigger that madness. To push Logan to his breaking point in the Duke's archives, you have to purchase every single spell he sells, and that requires a massive in-game commitment of 183,000 souls. It's almost like a dark Easter egg planted by the developers, making the player completely complicit in funding his descent into absolute insanity through sheer economic mechanics.
All right, Section 3, the Conqueror, Iron Tarkus.
To really understand our brawn, Iron Tarkus, we have to look at the group he belongs to. The Baronica Knights were extolled as the mightiest of mighty knights. They flocked to Lordran heavily clad in thick steel armor, carrying gigantic swords. But almost all of them failed at Sen's Fortress and went hollow. Black Iron Tarkus is the absolute pinnacle among them, simply because he's the only one who didn't fail.
And this brilliantly illustrates a contrast built directly into the level design. On one hand, you have the brain, Logan, this fragile sorcerer relying on intellect who ends up trapped and needs your help to be saved. And on the other hand, you have the brawn, Tarkus, the strongest knight relying on pure brute force who not only conquers the fortress, but actively helps you, the player, survive it.
The mechanical lore behind Tarkus's strength is absolutely fascinating. His armor is made of a special black iron that gives incredible fire protection, but it's famously unwieldy. The lore explicitly states only he is strong enough to wear it. And the developers coded a brilliant detail here. His gear is so incredibly heavy that when you summon him as a phantom, he actually fat rolls because his in-game endurance can barely handle his own equipment weight.
But despite the fat rolling, his feats are legendary within the community. You can summon him for the final trial of Sen's fortress, the Iron Golem, and he's so wildly powerful he is entirely capable of soloing the boss while you just stand back and watch. He's the only knight to successfully reach Anor Londo. Plus, as a really fun piece of trivia, his massive armor and name are highly likely inspired by a character from the 1987 manga JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Which brings us to our final act, Section 4, Tragic Ends in Lordran.
For Big Hat Logan, it's the ultimate tragedy of the smartest man going completely insane. After you buy his spells and defeat Seath, his mind entirely shatters. You find him in the chamber where you first encountered Seath, completely hostile, and in this dark but visually absurd twist, he has stripped off all of his clothing except for his namesake big hat. His pursuit of knowledge literally destroyed him.
And for Tarkus, it's the tragedy of the strongest man. He survived every crushing boulder and swinging blade in Sen's fortress, proving his unmatched physical might. But shortly after reaching Anor Londo, you find his corpse. He perished at the hands of the incredibly agile, dagger-wielding painting guardians high up on the narrow rafters. The tragic irony here? That legendary ultra-heavy black iron armor that saved him in the fortress is highly likely what caused his fatal fall from those rafters.
Yet despite all this rich, tragic lore, the community always manages to ground things back in pure gameplay reality. One player noted the immense relief you feel when playing a non-mage build, realizing you don't have to do all the tedious backtracking for Logan's quest. It perfectly shows how we can deeply appreciate a heartbreaking story while remaining hilariously annoyed by the heavy mechanical lifting required to actually see it.
Which leaves us with this final thought to ponder. Looking at both Logan and Tarkus, the brilliant sorcerer consumed by his own hubris, and the unmatched warrior whose greatest strength became his literal downfall, we have to ask, does conquering the ultimate proving ground of Sen's fortress actually reward you? Or does it merely delay a much darker, inevitable tragedy? Thank you for joining me for this explainer. I hope it sparked your curiosity, and I absolutely can't wait to dive into our next mystery together.